Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
All right, welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy back with you on our, semi-regular day. I don't know, man. It's been weird. Like I'm formulating college football ranking systems, and I'm listening to like old Genesis records. It's starting to get to me, boys. How about you?
I have watched as much old baseball as possible. That's my only saving grace at this moment.
Okay, define old.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say old. I would say the oldest thing I've ever watched, probably this week, I've watched something from the 1970s. And then this morning, I've watched about as much of the 2001 World Series as I could possibly handle.
I can't even with that one.
That's how we're going.
Yeah, I can't do the 2001 World Series. It hurts too much. It hurts.
Oh, I know. But just today, Jeffrey, I watched Game 4 and Game 5 on my own, and then Game 7 was re-airing on MLB Network, so I watched it too. It's just, Game 7, all you have to do is turn it off.
That's
after the bottom of the 8th. That's all you got to do.
No, I can't. I just can't. What about you, Eric? I know you've been. Listen, everybody listening to this show. Eric has been a model citizen. All right, he has. He's been. You've been at home. Your mom's there with you. You're taking care of her. You have been on lockdown.
Literally, yeah. I could tell you. The last time I went out was about 20-some days ago. The last time I had any physical contact with anybody physically was about 27, 28 days ago. So, yeah, I couldn't we're locked in here in the house. We have everything delivered. We tell the people that deliver stuff to stay outside as we live. Here you go, Jeff. You'll like this. Land of confusion, huh? Little Genesis.
Yeah.
Huh? That's we're part of right there, just to kind of go under that. And then I'm currently in the middle of simulating the rest of the 2020 college softball season. That's right.
Okay.
I announced that on my In the Circle podcast. So we will have a 2020 softball season, boys.
This is the world we live in, and these are the hands we're given.
That's right, yeah. Come on, Murph, jump on the Genesis bandwagon, baby.
I did
What
not.
are the iconic bands?
Okay, sure. That's subjective.
I said earlier on Twitter. I said, what have you been doing? I've been formulating a college football ranking system that Eric already told me he doesn't like. I've been trying to use my spare time to get back on the fitness train. All right, so I'm doing some body weight exercises. I already feel a little healthier. You know, I'm trying to do that. Although I've been eating like crap, so it's probably just evens out. And then and I've been trying to I've been listening to like Peter Gabriel era Genesis records. You know, I'm trying to figure out time signatures. You know, it's
I've been pitching
loony.
UCF content ideas off the
I know. I've been.
I'm trying everybody.
We're working. I feel like we're still kind of in shock. You know, that over everything. But we got some stuff coming for you that hopefully we're going to like. And it's been, it's been a while. There's not much. Like I said, a lot of our site's time has been spent, doing news, and like we don't, there's not a lot of news, but we are going to talk about some news tonight, though.
We really haven't done news in the past much. We don't do a lot of news stuff. Like if something happens, we don't report it as is. We just sort of do takes on it, or we'll do an idea off of it. We don't really report the news and just post it.
Listen, don't rain on your own parade here, Murphy.
Well, we do have news right now. If you go to blackandgoldbanneret.com, you would see Brian Murphy's one-on-one with UCF men's basketball coach.
No, that's not news though. That was just an interview that I did. Like that's more
news that came out of that, which we'll get into on this episode, right, Jeff?
Well, okay. Well, all right. I'll give you this. It's not a Murph bomb. It's not a Murph bomb at all.
No, nothing is.
We've seen some Murph bombs on occasion.
Stop it. God, you're making quarantine worse.
I just love it. I love that term. It sounds so much better than Woj bomb.
All
right, here's what we're going to talk about. A couple things here. First of all, the NCAA eligibility waivers are coming out for the spring sports. We're going to talk about that for a little bit, and then we're also going to talk about what's been kind of the talk here about college football season and will it happen in the fall at all? A lot of administrators, I think smartly, are preparing for the possibility that it may not happen and what's going to happen after that. So we'll get to that in the second half of the show. But the first half of the show, we're going to talk about the NCAA making a wise decision. Of course, this is from Billy Witz of the New York Times. The Division I Council voted earlier this week on Monday to open the door to another year of eligibility for all spring sport athletes whose seasons were cut short by the coronavirus outbreak. But whether an athlete is able to return will largely depend on the decisions by universities, which will determine how much scholarship aid to offer and whether to apply for an individual to receive an NCAA waiver allowing an additional season. For example, a college could allow an athlete's eligibility to be restored on the condition that the athlete pays some or all of the cost of attendance. This applies to sports like baseball, softball, golf, tennis, lacrosse, track and field, beach volleyball, and rowing. Those sports were shut down on March the 12th. Winter sports are not getting that extra eligibility. So that's your basketballs, gymnastics, wrestling, and others in other sports. But all right, so Murph.
Yes.
Good call by the NCAA to do this for the spring athletes, but it still feels like there's some holes here. What were your first impressions of it?
Well, it's a feel good measure, right? I mean, you have a bunch of kids who let's just take UCF baseball for example. Gee, I wonder why I picked that one.
No.
Where if you even just if you assume that not only do they play some conference tournament, but they probably make the regionals as well, that they barely played a third of their season, right? I mean, they played really less than a third of their regular season.
Right. They didn't even get to conference play.
Right, exactly. So for those kids to get an extra year, obviously makes a lot more sense than for the winter sports athletes, which, for basketball, a lot of conferences finished their conference tournament already by the time that everything was shut down, so that makes it really difficult. But on the surface, and I'm writing about this for the website, I hope to have this posted on Friday, just about the ins and outs of this whole agreement, decision by the D1 Council to give everyone a extra year. It feels good. It feels just. These kids lost a season. They lost any postseason possibility, lost most of their season regardless. So to give them an extra year feels principled and just. However, as you kind of mentioned, Jeffrey, there are some pros, there are some cons, and most of all, there is a ton of things we just don't know about, both from a macro point of view as far as the team and the university, and a micro point of view as far as how this affects each player.
Yeah, I was a little worried about that. The NCAA obviously wants to remember. I keep saying this. Everyone thinks it's an absolute monarchy, and it's not. It's a federal organization. Okay, and they're allowing the colleges to figure out whether or not they have the funding to fully fund everybody's scholarship for this additional year, because the scholarship counts are going to be crazy. The rosters, I think, are probably going to be just as crazy. But at least they're opening the door to saying, look, okay, we're going to allow everybody to have an extra year. Who are spring athletes. That's totally fine. But you guys figure it out from here.
Well, yes, mostly that. So for baseball, they give out 11.7 scholarships, not 12. They give out 11.7. That 11.7 allotment is still going to be split among your true freshmen, and then your returning freshmen, juniors, freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. The seniors who are seniors this season and then choose to return for their extra year next year, they can also get scholarship aid that will not count against the 11.7 limit. However, it is up to the school to decide how much aid they want to give each of those seniors. The options there are they can give as much as they allotted them this season, no more than that, up to how much they got, or they could give them anywhere in between that and zero. They could decide to give them nothing. So again, yes, from a payment standpoint, how these universities pay for it, that's sort of an out, and it would be kind of a crappy out. But you could say to your senior, like, look, we'd love to have you back, but we're actually going to give you less financial aid this year than you got last year. They are within the grounds to do that, and that opens up a whole lot of things about, would guys then choose to leave school, transfer? Will we have a one-time transfer window with no penalty? That could be coming in July, which would make the sport. It would open it up to a hurricane force like of movement among the players in the sport. And I think that's going to happen too. I think you're going to see that happen, and you're going to see guys transfer all over the place come this summer.
Now, Murph, and I want you to kind of clarify this. One of the things that's not going to help this is the Major League Baseball draft, which normally you would lose. One of the reasons why baseball programs bring in a lot of big classes is anticipation of guys leaving, especially underclassmen, to get drafted on a Major League Baseball draft, which I'll let you defer to this. I don't remember what the exact amount of rounds is on a normal year was, but obviously we're not in a normal year. And now, correct me if I'm wrong now, as of now, the Major League Baseball draft is scheduled now for July, and it's going to be either is it a 5-round draft or a 10-round draft? Because I'm still not 100% sure. Kind of clarify what the status of the Major League Baseball draft is, because that also impacts kind of what's going to happen here with the baseball rosters.
Right. So a usual baseball draft these days is a 40-round draft that takes place in June. And then on Friday of last week, it was announced that the draft would be no fewer than 5 rounds. So at least 5 rounds, but probably, according to a bunch of people who are in the business, probably not more than 10 rounds. So the draft would go from 40 rounds down to about 5 or 10 rounds, and thus you are really, really cutting into the draft pool. And here's another thing too: if it is a 5-round draft, which it very well could be, that might only include 180 or 170 players among high school, JUCO, college, eligible players going into the draft. If you are undrafted, meaning if you even go in round 6, quote unquote, which previously would have landed you a 6-figure slot, it would have been like a 6-figure draft slot. You would have gotten, 6 figures to sign, usually in rounds 6 through 10. If you are undrafted in those first 5 rounds and you get drafted after that, you only get $20,000. And so that's another reason why this is a good decision to not only give seniors an extra year, but also juniors. For you look at a guy, I'm going to use this guy as an example, and I think it's a good example. If you look at a guy like Jordan Sinclair, who this year was absolutely dominant for UCF out of the bullpen, and with the stuff he's got, throwing 98 with a really sharp slider, if he had a full season like that, I could definitely see him, working his way into that 6 through 10 round range, maybe even a little bit higher. He is a junior this season, right? But now that he has gotten extra year of eligibility, he has more leverage when it comes to deciding his future. Because if he hadn't got the extra year, then Jack Sinclair would have been a senior next year, and it basically would have been left to say, I've only got 1 year to improve my stock, or I could leave now to get $20,000. But with an extra year, he now has 2 years to improve his stock, and it gives him a lot more bargaining power as an amateur athlete. So that's one of the reasons why not just seniors, but everybody getting an extra year is pretty substantial, because it allows the guys who aren't seniors but who have professional baseball, like really high-end pro ball dreams, to it gives them more leverage going into the draft.
The other thing that I think is pretty interesting, and you mentioned the baseball thing, but the NCAA kind of caught a huge break here by this happening. I mean, all things considered, kind of caught a break by this happening in the spring, because the sports that are going to be affected, and you talk about the scholarship counts with baseball, it's 11.7. Okay, none of the I take that back. Only very few of the sports that have been affected by this are what the NCAA calls a head count sport, where everyone on the roster is under scholarship. For example, tennis on the women's side is a head count sport, but there are only 8 slots. Okay, track and field, women's track and field for UCF, that's 18 scholarships. Softball, Eric Lopez, is 12. Murphy, you mentioned baseball is 11.7. Men's tennis is not a head count sport. They have 4.5 scholarships. So in that respect, golf, by the way, is 4.5 on the men's side and 6 on the women's side. In that respect, guys, the NCAA got lucky, and schools like UCF got lucky, because those are relatively small numbers that they're going to have to figure out for the 2020-2021 season. Right, Eric?
I agree. Now, what's rowing situation? Do you know off the top of your head what the rowing situation
Rowing, I'm actually looking at this. This is according to scholarshipstats.com. Yeah. Women's rowing has 20 scholarships, and it is not a head count sport.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Jeff. I think all things considered in the spring, they were fortunate in that regard. I think they made the right decision. I know some people are like, well, why didn't they guarantee the financial side of things? But I'm going to defend the NCAA that nobody knows what the economics are going to look like in the near future or the long future. And I also think, and again, I'm not going to speak for baseball, because baseball, and Murph has done a great job of explaining it. So yeah, baseball is going to be wild to just see how that all plays out moving forward, with future classes being impacted. I mean, how baseball coaches are going to manage this roster moving forward is going to be fascinating. But yeah, I agree. And I think, again, the NCAA, considering the uncertainty of the future with the financial deal, losing the NCAA tournament men's basketball championships, which is obviously their big moneymaker, I think they made a really good decision. I don't know what you guys think. I was surprised that they gave a year to everybody. I thought going in, it was just going to be seniors only. Instead, they gave it to everybody on the roster.
That's what I thought too. Yeah.
There were reports from people who were, talking to sources in that council meeting, saying that there was actually a building thought that they actually might give no eligibility to anybody. And so the thought going in to that meeting was it was either going to go one of two ways. Either no one was going to get eligibility, or it was going to be seniors only. And you really didn't hear much anybody talk about how everybody might get an extra. You really didn't hear that much leading into the meeting.
Do you think a part of it was like everyone's like, "What? Let's see how the NCAA can screw this up"?
No, I think part of it. Don't you? I don't know what you guys think about this. Part of it might be in the back of their mind is they know, hey, we don't know what's going to happen in the fall, so we need to kind of be consistent here, because we don't know what's going to happen down the road. So if we have to go through this again, let's say in the fall sports, you want to make sure you have a consistent thing. You don't want to do one thing for the spring sports and then you go to the fall, you do something completely different. So I think part of it might be, let's be consistent what we're going to do. I was surprised they did everybody, but I'm fine with it. Now, let me just go speak from the softball standpoint, because it's different than baseball. And that I think softball is going to be fine. Now, I've been arguing on the softball podcast this week. We did a big breakdown of it, and I've been disappointed at some of my colleagues out there that have kind of freaked out about it, upset about not getting financial aid guarantee, or, oh, this is going to separate the haves and the have-nots. And my counter is like, what sport are you covering again? Because the haves and have-nots have already been separated. I mean, the big schools are always going to be fine. I actually think this helps everybody as far as mid-major programs and smaller schools, because they got a chance to keep their best players. And the thing that I think is overblown, again, baseball aside, the rest of these spring sports, I don't see a lot of the seniors, for example, coming back. And the reason is, in softball, there is no Major League Baseball draft to look forward to that you're aspiring to. You could say, well, there's the NPF draft, but that doesn't make a ton of money. A majority of seniors that are in softball are already looking ahead to life either away from softball, getting a real job, moving home, or trying to get a job in softball. So a lot of times what happens is they already have something lined up that they can't really just push to the side. So I think what's going to happen, for example, in softball, I think the marquee players are going to come back, but I think the players that weren't playing much, if you're a senior, you're not going to come back if you've got your degree. So I don't think, and I threw this out there, I think 50%, 50-50 of the seniors will be back in softball. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal that some people think. I think some people have in their mind, well, everybody's going to come back. I don't believe that every student athlete is just going to come back because they have that extra year. Some will just not even use it.
Well, the other factor too, Eric, is this. Consider that the student athletes, they're still going to class, right? They're still getting their credit hours done. They might be remotely, but what have you. It's just the athletic eligibility that we're talking about here. Now, those seniors who would have graduated this spring, they would be grad students next year. And this is where I think the financial thing comes into play that the NCAA is kind of letting the universities figure it out is what are they going to do? Are they going to take master's classes? And, we all know that the per credit hour tuition price for master's classes is much greater than it is even at a large public school like UCF is much greater than bachelor's level classes. So, it kind of gives the schools, this seems a little diabolical when you think about it, but it kind of gives the schools the ability to say, hey, look, we'll let you back, but you kind of got to, you can pay, look, this is just spitballing here, but you will have to pick up the difference of the cost between your bachelor's credit hours and your master's credit hours. You see what I mean?
Okay. The only relief that was offered and granted is eligibility. Right. There is no guarantee that any of these seniors receive scholarship aid or a roster spot. That is not guaranteed. What is guaranteed is that they have another year of eligibility. That's the only thing. Two quick parts to that are related to what I'm going to say. I talked to Greg Lovelady recently. Before the vote came down, but within the last couple of weeks, and I asked him about this because I expected the seniors to get another year. And for UCF baseball, there were 4 seniors on this year's team. All of them were redshirt seniors. And so they'd already been in college baseball for 5 years. And I asked them, do you think those seniors were in a position to take advantage of another year if they were granted it? Because, let's be honest, guys. Could some of these kids possibly could not afford to come back for a 6th year of college athletics. And so, he did say that according to him, he did say that there are options for everyone to come back. Some kids are in master's programs. Some kids could prolong those master's programs or start another one. So he said that and this was early on. So things might have changed since a couple of weeks ago. But just in terms of UCF, he did say that those guys have options to come back. But I think but Eric is right. For a lot of seniors, they're just not going to be able to because they're already talking about going. They already had a job lined up somewhere, or they've been interviewing for jobs anyway, or they had a master's program lined up at another school somewhere. They can't afford to come back, so it's nice, but they're not going to be able to take use of this.
Yeah.
Well, and let's make this clear. Let me make this clear too, because I've spoken to about 10 softball head coaches this week, obviously for my softball podcast, from different leagues, Power 5, mid-majors, and all that. None of them, by the way, for the record, UCF. I have not talked to Coach Bear. She's actually, I believe, about 2 weeks away from giving birth as we record this. So I'm giving them their space, and, I have not reached out, nor do I intend to.
She's busy.
Thank you, yes. So, but I just want to clarify that, because when I say, hey, I've spoken to 10 coaches this week, people are like, oh, well, you talked to UCF. No, I have not, okay? So I just want to clarify that. But let's make this clear. If a marquee player, a great player, wants to come back, that coach will make sure that it'll work out. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if they don't, because this is what happens here, because some people criticize, well, you're putting the coaches in a bad spot. Well, at least in softball. I'm just going to speak for softball. I'm not going to speak for baseball. I don't follow the date, how that. But as everybody, I think this happens in every sport to some extent. There's exit interviews when your season ends. And a lot of times what happens with coaches when they go to the player and they say, look, I got to be honest with you. We don't have really a spot for you. You're not going to play here. So I'm just going to be upfront with you. We just don't think you have a spot here. So you could come back, but if you want to also look elsewhere, feel free. And then that kid decides, well, if I'm not going to play here, I'm going to transfer, and that opens up spots. And so my point is, the players that want to come back, and if they're really good, the coaches will figure that out. They'll make it happen. They're not just going to say, oh, sorry, I mean, you're our best pitcher, but we don't have anything for you. No, they'll make it work. Now, unfortunately, could it be at the expense of somebody else on the roster that probably wasn't playing, or could it be at the expense of a future recruit that was incoming, a freshman? Maybe. But that happens anyway. That happens in softball anyway on a normal year. Now they actually have an excuse to say, well, this is why, due to unique circumstances. This happens behind closed doors. So again, that's why I'm confident coaches, while yes, it's not the most ideal situation, they're used to massaging rosters, especially since we've had the transfer portal implemented in college athletics, because as a coach, you almost have to be ready to adapt, because you may lose a kid at a moment's notice to transfer elsewhere, or you might be one that's interested in a kid that's in the transfer portal. So you have to constantly be able to be adapting to your roster.
The other thing I think that's pretty interesting here is, like you mentioned, that a lot of the softball people are, you did not believe what a lot of your colleagues in the softball media world said about how this is just going to let the rich get richer, and I agree with you on your disagreement on that for another reason. It's that there are only so many positions on a roster, right? So. Yep. Does everyone really think that all the best players from, say, the American are gonna find themselves on Big Ten rosters in 2021? No, those schools are already loaded to begin with. Now, might you see one or two possibly? Right. Yeah, sure, but it's not going to turn. It's not going to be nearly as much. And by the way, the schools like UCF, the non-power schools, may actually benefit from it on balance just as much as the power schools are, because those power schools want to bring some of those big recruits in, and some senior who, was okay for them might actually be really good for a school like UCF or Memphis, or not Memphis doesn't have stuff, or some other school at the American, or maybe a smaller school closer to their home. They might be able to take advantage of that and actually improve their roster for 2021, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, let's use UCF for example, okay? Because I know the one name that has already been thrown at me since this came down is Aaliyah White, right? Senior pitcher, was on the verge of breaking the wins record and things like that, which is a whole other subject. Some softball people are upset about the fact that stats are going to count this year, and they think there should be asterisks towards records. I think that's nonsense. College athletics, I mean, nobody complains about college football records being broken when they're playing more games. That's stupid. But let's take UCF, for example. Why I think this is not like, there's a UCF was going to lose Aaliyah White after this year. She was going to graduate, right? Now, do they have good pitchers coming back in theory for next year? Yeah. Is anybody as good as Aaliyah White? I don't know. You can't assume they're going to be better because, they don't have Aaliyah White. Well, guess what now? Potentially, they'll have Aaliyah White for another year. That makes you better. You're a better team. And I think that's what's going to happen. I actually think, and I can't speak again for baseball. Baseball is unique, but I think you're going to see teams that are much more stacked. And to your point, every team has different situations. Some teams have not many seniors. Some teams do. So like in Alabama softball, I think they have like 7 or 8 seniors. Is he really going to be able to bring all 8 seniors back? Probably not. So they're going to lose some kids. Some teams will be able to. So I actually think this creates more parity, not less parity in softball. And I think I actually think it helps the mid-majors and the smaller schools. I talked to some of the schools and the coach in the Patriot League. They're actually ecstatic because a kid that they were going to lose to graduation. I mean, think about it. If you have a star pitcher in the Patriot League, you don't just replace him in 1 year. Usually you have to develop him. Now you get him for another year. you're actually going to be better off than you thought you would be next year. So I actually think the whole product on the field, and I think, Murph, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Greg Lovelady even mentioned that he thinks the product overall is going to be better because of all this stuff that's going on. Now, another thing that we keep in mind, if a senior comes back to that school, they don't count towards, at least in softball, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's the same in baseball, Murph, they don't count toward that number of scholarships. They do not count that. But if they transfer, they do count as a scholarship to that school they go to. So I think that's important also to bring up.
So, yeah, Eric, you're right. The seniors will not count with, in college baseball, the 35-man rosters, and you have 11.7 scholarships, that must be split among 27 players. 27 of the 35 must be on scholarship, and each of those 27 have to receive at least 25% of a scholarship. I know it's a lot of numbers, but the seniors won't count for any of that. If they put them on scholarship for as much as they were worth last year, all the way between 0 and up to what they were worth, and they will not count if they come back against the 35-man roster limit either. So, I mean, it's like we talked about, we'll see how many seniors can take advantage of it because they might have other things lined up or they just can't afford to. If they get their scholarship taken away, they may not be able to afford it, but we'll see what happens. But like Lovelady said that it's going to make a better game, he's right, because not only would you have more college players coming back because of the eligibility, but now you're going to have more high school players entering the college ranks. Kids who might think they would be a 6th or 7th round pick are now not going to take the chance of if they're going to be, if their only options are take $20,000 now or go to college, they're probably going to wait a few years and go to college instead of starting their pro careers. You might see some kids in high school go to the pros now, some kids in college will go to the pros now just to start their career and see what happens. But you're gonna have a lot of high quality, not the elites of the elites. Those kids will still get drafted. But you still have a lot of high quality high school players come to the college game, and a lot of really, really good college players come back because it's such a short draft window this year for Major League Baseball. So as a whole, the college game benefits just because there's gonna be a lot more talent.
Wasn't MLB also going to shrink up the draft anyway?
Well, they would. So not only are they shrinking up, they've been talking about that for a while. No one has thought they'd shrink it down to 5 rounds, and this does not. And then this roster crunch, which is going to happen this year, is not going to end after this season because it seems like the draft for 2021 will only be 20 rounds, basically half of what the draft is now. So you're going to have another shortened year. And maybe the draft stays at 20 to 30 rounds going forward, but that means you're going to have a lot more kids who are not available to play pro ball. They're going to get squeezed out, so some of them might choose to either go to or stay in college. And so, we'll see what the makings of that are. But this is not going to be a thing that fixes itself in 1 year. The ramifications of this are going to last for a number of years, and because so many kids are on a roster, that's why there's a common thought that you're going to see a no penalty transfer window open up this summer for either players on the team who all of a sudden do not have a roster spot or think that they're going to be pushed out of a job because there's so many other players on the team. They can go right away to another school and play right away, or high school players who maybe get let out of their NLI, right, which might happen next. And so because these high school kids sign with a school thinking that they're going to have an opportunity right away to play, and now they may not, so they might be let out of their NLI. You're going to see a ton of transfers in college baseball. It's going to be a crazy summer for that sport.
The other good thing, right, Murphy, correct me if I'm wrong on this, the NCAA said that every year they'll look at the roster situation. It's not like, hey, you better figure it out by next year. They'll actually, it'll be year to year, they will address the roster situation and where they're at that point, right, if I'm not mistaken?
Correct. I mean, this is obviously a developing situation, not just in baseball, but globally. And they'll just sort of play it by ear. This is what they planned for 2021. But going forward, things are subject to change.
By the way, that's not to mention the fact that the professional baseball agreement between Major League Baseball and the minor leagues is set to expire September 30th, 2020, and that's the whole thing where, you know, was MLB thinking of, you know, forcing the minors to delete something on the in the neighborhood of, what was it, Murph, like about 40 teams?
Yeah, it was a lot. Now, if you want to get cynical, you could obviously say that the move to move the draft from 40 rounds to 5 to 10 is to basically
is a result of that.
Suffocate and starve those other teams and say, well, sorry, you guys don't have enough players. You know, we don't have enough players to field the team. You know, so be it. Now, I have heard that no matter what, those like the rookie balls and short season A leagues, they still think they're gonna have enough players to field a team. But I think the thinking there is that after a while, the attrition and the lack of new talent into the system is probably going to cause those programs to fold. And so, yeah, this might actually be something that MLB wants, as sort of diabolical as that sounds.
Yeah. And by the way, that is assuming we even have a season this year, which, you know, we're still not 100% sure of.
Murph. Don't depress Murph anymore.
Hey, he's not the only one who's depressed about this, Eric.
Listen, Murph's been checking out Korean baseball and scrimmages, all right?
Yeah, I mean, look, guys, the Lotte Giants are well, they were. I don't know if they are anymore, but they were scrimmaging each other with no fans in the stands, but it's like, you know, inter-squad games. I mean, it's baseball. And then I watched some horse races. I watched some horse racing from Sweden, which was totally great.
Nice.
And I will say, look,
You and Mark Daniels watching horse racing.
Why not?
What is it? You guys in horse racing, you old school dudes.
How is horse racing still going on, by the way?
Well, it's in Sweden, so right now.
Okay, all right.
There's
I
not.
thought there
There's
was
not.
one in the States, but I could be wrong.
It's like only two horses, and they're you know, separated by 6 feet. You know. So
I believe there are a couple of tracks operating, at least a few tracks operating in the U.S.
Yeah. Then last weekend we had the Florida Derby for the horse racing.
Did we?
I think it did in Gulfstream. I think there was a horse race. I thought that.
Now it wouldn't surprise me. It is Florida. I mean, this state.
Yeah, we did have the Florida Derby, by the way. So
I don't know if I've come to terms, but I have sort of accepted the fact that there may not be a Major League Baseball season. I understand that. Because
will there be a Korean baseball season, though? I mean, can we have?
There could definitely be a Korean baseball season. They're doing great, but not for us.
Can we do a weekly segment where you update us on what's going on in Korean Japan baseball?
Probably some like old major leaguers, like someone like, I don't know, is Willie Mo Pena still playing? He might be still playing.
That's what you got to look into. That
Shin-Soo Choo.
Segment, talking baseball with Murph. You know, normally this time of year we talking college UCF, who they playing. They were supposed to play Wichita State. Now we could turn it into what's going on in the Korean League transactions.
Wait, didn't Ben Lively go to Ben Lively? Didn't Ben Lively go to the Korean League?
That's a good question. We need to look this up.
Oh yeah, let's go. The wheels are in motion.
He did. Yeah, he did.
Oh wow. Okay. So we have active UCF players.
So wait. So
he's with the Samsung Lions, by the way, which is just an all-timer.
And you'll be happy to know that Ben Lively did re-up for the 2020 season. So Ben Lively is playing on the Samsung Lions in the KBO.
That's your new. You're on the beat. You're on the beat. The Ben Lively beat in the Korean League. You got to write about it. Come on now.
We have UCF baseball content.
When does that season start?
So it's not guaranteed. The window right now is they're looking toward late April.
Okay, but they at least seem a little bit optimistic about it, right? I mean, that, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you had Japanese teams that were practicing up until very recently, and they're still aiming to begin their season around the same time. So you could have actual pro baseball being played in Asia this month, which would be outstanding for those of us who are starving.
You know what's great about this is you have teams that are not named after towns but companies like Kia, Samsung, what else? LG.
Yes.
This is great. I need this in my life right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, a Black Gold Banneret Podcast, your home for Korean baseball.
That's right. We will be breaking down we'll be breaking down what the Samsung Lions do against the Lotte Giants and the
links to regular season games. Send it our way. Send it our way.
We will do the Kia Tigers. This is fantastic.
I want to know how Ben Lively did last year.
Yeah.
Did he pitch?
All right. Well, while you look at that, Murph, we're going to take a break.
I'm busy.
And when we return, we're going to talk about college football and the open question that is whether or not we may have a season in 2020. And
what an upbeat episode this has been so far.
Well, I mean, hey, there might be some changes afoot in college football. We talked about it before about we like to joke about, why does the school even have a program? Well, if things go sideways, college football might look a lot different the next time we see football players on the gridiron. So stick around. We'll talk about that and more when we return. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
We're back here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, and Jeff Sharon, Brian Murphy, Eric Lopez with you. Brian, during our break, found Ben Lively's statistics in the Korean Baseball League. Murph, what were you able to determine with your crack investigation skills?
Well, former UCF baseball pitcher and former Philadelphia Philly Ben Lively, who's been pitching for the Samsung Lions since 2019, he made 9 starts last year for the Samsung Lions. He went 4-4. With a 3.95 ERA and a 1.12 WHIP. I would say the highlight of his season was back on August 20th, in which he had a complete game shutout with 12 Ks against the Hanwha. I believe it's the Hanwha Lions. Is that correct? Wait,
Hanwha Eagles.
Excuse me. He had a complete game shutout back in August against the Hanwha Eagles. 12 Ks, no walks for Ben Lively.
I just love the fact they're letting starting pitchers throw a complete game. We don't even get that in the States anymore. I mean, come on.
Oh, come on.
Threw a complete game in 104 pitches. He almost threw a Maddox.
That's not bad. They play at the Daegu Samsung Lions Park in Daegu, South Korea, for anyone who's interested. Yes. Let's talk football. So earlier this week, we heard from Danny White. He spoke to the Orlando Sentinel. Matt Michelle and Mike Bianchi were in on it and answered a couple questions about how coronavirus has been changing things at UCF, and some interesting things came off of that. The first thing that I think everyone took way out of context was Danny White floating the idea of bailouts for college football programs, which is just not going to happen. It's something that I don't even know why everyone picked that up and ran with it, because I don't think that was what he was insinuating at all. But one thing I do want to talk about, at least for the purposes of here, is let's say college football gets delayed. And let's say as we flatten the curve, right? We still can't have large gatherings of people for the fall, because that's certainly a possibility. What might the college football season in 2020 or possibly 2021 look like? So starting off with Brett McMurphy, who works for Stadium now, threw out the idea that, by the way, he and his colleagues at Stadium, I will say, did a very fine job reaching out to 112 athletic directors within the Football Bowl subdivision, and we'll link this in the show's description. But there were all kinds of ideas getting thrown out there: 9-game regular season, conference-only regular seasons, or a 12-game regular season that was divided by over the fall and the spring, kind of like what they were trying to do with soccer and what they do with tennis and golf, for example. The semifinals and title game for the conference college football playoffs being played in May or possibly even June that late, like making football a spring sport for 1 year. There's all kinds of things that are on the table here. And my question is, how would this apply to UCF? Because to me, UCF's program is right on the knife's edge. Okay, you have a school that is approaching power conference status, or at least trying to, when it comes to finances, but is not quite there yet. It's still things are still tight for Danny White and UCF's and UCF's overall financial situation. So how would this affect UCF? Let's say we don't have a regular football season in the fall of 2020. Let's say we have it in the spring of 2021. I should clarify. What does that do for UCF? Could that be? Does it become a net, overall wash, or could that hurt schools like UCF financially? I don't know. Murph, what do you think?
No, I think you're saying if they don't have it at all, if they have no season?
No, if they do have it in the spring, for example.
It's gonna hurt for a while because the money you expect to be there is gonna be basically deferred, right? It's gonna be delayed. So it's gonna be it's gonna hurt. I don't understand the nature of the question. Is it gonna be like a death penalty? I don't think it'll be a death penalty for like programs. Like obviously because football money lifts up so many other programs. The money from that is king. But if they can at least get a football season into the spring of 2021, it would then at least, I would say, be a solve for some of the issues. But that would make this fall really, really difficult. It would lead to a lot of challenges. And so but I don't think those challenges, as long as they could get a season on, I think before next fall, before the fall 21, they could probably make up that difference. But just the time window they're going to have to wait is going to be really painful.
What about you, Eric? What do you think about what moving the season would do to programs at UCF's level financially, or perhaps below?
I think it depends, and here's the problem, and I've been amused by McMurphy and all these guys, and this all started when Kurt Herbstreit came out and said, "Hey, I don't think we're gonna have a season," and everybody freaked out, and then Matt Hayes was on with Mark and Mike. I don't, guys, it's looking pretty bleak. I don't know, and then today, no, we could do it. Here's the problem that college athletics has: pro sports like the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, they could play without fans in the building and be fine, because most of their money, the money that they're really, if those leagues come back at all and play this year, and I don't want to get into, are you an optimist about that, pessimist, whatever. If they play, a big part of it is that TV revenue. For example, the NBA, if the NBA does not finish their season, they stand to lose up to $700 to $1 billion of money. ESPN and Turner are slated to lose about $700 million in that if the NBA season doesn't complete. So there's motivation to get something finished. It doesn't have to be in a full building. The problem, the college football will say, they have two problems. For example, in UCF's case, it's not good enough to just have a college football season. You could play it, but are you going to have fans, or you're not going to have fans? Because that money in the gate is important to a lot of college football programs. You don't have that big TV deal that, say, an SEC does or a Big Ten does. So the SEC and the Big Ten will be fine, but if you're UCF, you would prefer to have people in the stands paying money, so that's where you make your revenue. If you can play, but you can't play in front of fans, which is a high probability, that's a problem, because you're not going to be slated to have great TV slots in the spring. I hate to break it to administrations. You're not going to have your sweet spot TV spots in the spring, or even maybe this fall, the way sports is lining up, because the NFL is king. So whenever the NFL plays, they get priority, and then the NBA will get priority, and then all these other things get priority. So I think college athletics has that problem, not to mention until a campus is actually open, there's nothing you can do. And I don't know when that's going to be. Nobody knows when that's going to be. And that's why you're seeing all these stories coming out, because these administrators are freaking out.
Yeah, they're freaking out because they have to think about this stuff, right? I mean, they have, that's their job is to play this, 10, 15 moves out into the future. I think it would be lunacy to have, if students are not allowed to be on the campuses as regular, all of a sudden you're going to make an exception for student athletes. I think that would be
if they get to that,
that would be a very, very bad look for the NCAA, though.
Well, but this is the problem. NCAA doesn't run college football, and that's what I'm saying. And I think this is the other issue. Everybody does their own thing. So Alabama might do something different than UCF does. I wouldn't even be shocked, guys, if you had a situation where certain conferences don't even play this year. Like if you're the MAC, you're losing money on football. Is there real motivation to play football? Probably not. Whereas the SEC is obviously motivated. There might be other places they're like, it ain't worth it. So now I do think we'll have some sort of football, whether it be later in the fall, maybe in the spring. But I don't think it's as simple as everybody thinks it is. There's a lot of hurdles to jump for that, more so than even pro sports. And I just don't think – I think we're going to have a season, but I don't think it's a season that people think. I think it's going to be a completely different thing than it's what's on schedule. And that's okay. I think the administrators, as I've talked to some administrators this week as well, as long as they get some sort of a football season – again, this is a case-by-case situation – then they'll be fine. If there is no college football this year by anybody, there will be a lot of casualties in college athletics. And I'm talking about programs, not football, but other programs in that college athletics going bye-bye. And I think it'll be very ugly.
Yeah, well, that would be my next question is, even if, say, we have a truncated or shrunken college football season that plays in the spring, you might indeed say some conferences be like, guys, it's not worth it. Right. Could we see a situation where this would accelerate what we've been talking about for years, which is another massive round of conference realignment, and maybe some lower tier FBS schools either dropping football or dropping the level of football that they play at down to FCS or what have you, because, we might see some of those smaller programs at FCS move down to Division II. I remember after Katrina, for example, when the University of New Orleans couldn't play, they dropped down from Division I to Division III for a period of time. Tulane managed to stay afloat, but that was one example of what happened. Idaho actually dropped down they were the first program ever to drop down from FBS proper to FCS. I don't know. Could we see that happen? And who do you think would be the programs? Let's just keep it in the American, for example. What programs in the American would be looking at this and thinking, man, if this thing goes sideways, we have some big decisions to make?
Well, I think Tulsa comes to mind. Small school.
Immediately.
Doesn't draw, right? I think they are nervous. I think Tulane, you could argue. Murph, you've been to Tulane more recent. Obviously, you could speak better on that. I know they got the new stadium, but it's not like there's big support for football there. This is the thing, too. And this is the thing, right? And this is what's going to drive me nuts. Everybody says, oh, well, football's your moneymaker. It provides for all your college athletics. Yeah, if you're successful. But if you're not, it's also drains on you. And I agree with you on this, Jeff. There's too many pro schools that play football. Way too many. And I think you will see more. I think if there's no college football, and again, hopefully that's not the case, I think we will have some sort of a season. But if there's not, I think you will see. I was told by somebody who works in the Sun Belt, if there's no college football this year in the Sun Belt, there's real questions whether the Sun Belt as we know it will even exist within a year or two. So because they don't have a lot of money at all. And I don't buy this realignment thing because it ain't like TV networks are going to be like, hey, guys, let's spend some money right now. No, they're like, we just lost a lot of money, if anything, I think what the more likely scenarios, you're going to see a lot of programs kind of drop off. And that might even include some in the Power 5. Let's not act like the Power 5 is power approved, because if you're the Pac-12, you're the Pac-12 and all the issues you've had with your distribution with the Pac-12 network, I wouldn't feel great if I was in the Pac-12. We've always said this. There's always been this mythical theory out there about the Power 4, eventually going to a Power 4. We might be seeing this before this decade ends if the Pac-12, if there's no football here, the Pac-12 could be in serious trouble. And I think so this is not just a, hey, Sun Belt, Matt. This could go all the way to the Pac-12, for example, and things like that. So I think that's the more likely scenario. And I think you'll see contractions of sports. I think it's going to be very ugly because people are like, why don't you touch football? Football, they try to protect them. Now, I do think I will say this. No, for these administrators, they also like to make it sound like they're really poor when they're really not. They can, as Jay Billis said in an interview this week, yeah, they might run out of money in their right pocket, but all they do is they're serving it to the left pocket. So they really, let's be honest. There's certain facilities that keep getting built by these universities that are probably a waste of time of money that probably should go bye-bye in the future.
Isn't that the other issue though? Is that, remember, these athletic departments are nonprofits, okay? Yeah. Which means that they have to they try their best, obviously, in order to avoid tax penalties, to spend all the money in revenue that they get. I mean, yeah, they make a lot of money. Obviously, that's there's no doubt about that. But their expenses are also high. They're not supposed to make money in terms of turning a profit, right?
Correct. But, I mean, some would argue, why should football have 85 scholarships? Why do the football staff have to recruit and travel and spend money traveling all through spring? Because that's just the way it is, right? I mean, there are ways you can cut unnecessary budgets, right? Like, hey, volleyball, guess what? You're going to play within your region. No, you're not going to get to go to Canada. You're not going to go to Hawaii. No, guess what? No conference tournament. Softball, guess what? You're not going to play beyond your. I think there are ways I would like to think, and I think we saw this week with Iowa State. They've already said, hey, a lot of their coaches are taking pay cuts, which I think is smart.
Mm-hmm.
That's like one of the first schools that you think of when you're like, okay.
Correct. Yep. But I think. And what I hate is a lot of schools, the easy thing to do is get rid of a sport. Get rid of screw it. Nobody cares. But in reality, if everybody works together, you could survive all the sports. You could be fine. There's just certain things that you look back and you're like, man, is that really necessary? We really and I think hopefully what I hope that comes out of this is that a lot of schools look back and say, you know what? We don't need that, that extra coordinator, quality control guy that brings the coffee to do the we don't need all that. And I speak this for every sport. There's probably something that every program has in every sport that you're like, is that really necessary? Like, do we really need to do that? So I hope that's what happens and not more casualties as far as people losing jobs or sports being contracted. And I'm not talking, beyond football. I'm talking about like hot, softball, tennis, golf, baseball. I mean, who knows? Hopefully we don't get to that. But I do think we will see a different college athletics than we've seen. And I do think, Jeff, to your point, I think we'll see some programs go down to FCS level.
Brian, when you look at this whole thing and what may happen when you blow holes in budgets like this,
What? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I guess I know you're allergic to speculation, but I'm gonna ask you to do it anyway.
Yeah.
What do you see as, I guess, not just UCF's point, but what we could see in the next? This isn't going to. The reverberations from this are not going to happen immediately. They're going to happen 3 to 5 years down the road. And especially, Eric, like we talked about many times with that upcoming slate of TV deals that's going to be coming up, that might be another driver behind this.
Yeah.
So,
well, you know what's funny? What's funny is the people that were ripping Mike Oresco for the length of the term of that American Conference deal.
Looks really smart now, doesn't it? That might have been
the smartest thing. Yeah, it looks pretty smart now, doesn't it? Because at least there's other leagues that don't have security. So at least if you're an American Conference member, you know that's the money you got coming in as we move forward. It's not like, oh, we're going to be in a new deal here soon. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So at least you have some stability in that regard moving forward, but other leagues can't say that.
Murph, what do you think? Like, what's the one thing that you look at and you're like, if this starts happening, man, the dominoes are going to start falling?
As far as what do you mean?
As far as like major movement in college football and college sports, teams moving down, maybe schools folding football altogether.
Well, I mean, but that's a product of a previous event. I mean, yeah, if that happens, then we're already. If that happens, I think we're already screwed. There will be a moment before that where you can sort of forecast it. We haven't reached that time yet, though. We haven't reached that point where we can say like that. This is going to happen. But maybe give us until maybe July.
Yeah,
and if we're in the same predicament now, we'll be in July. If nothing has really changed, if we're still on basically quarantine life and no one's allowed to go on campus and no one's allowed to recruit and no one's allowed to really be anywhere in groups, then you're going to say, wow, we have reached a point of no return. It is now going to be a death nail. I just think for UCF, I'd be interested to see how they can sort of deal with it and if they can survive, because UCF, while not being a Power 5, is not in the Sun Belt and is not the lower end of the Group of 5. Can they survive basically winter is coming? Can they survive an actual winter with no football till the spring without sacrificing any of their programs? I think that's something that I don't know yet. And even if the season comes to be canceled in the fall, I mean, possibly. But for UCF, maybe it's a little different because they do have more backing. They have more money. They're just bigger, so they have more money.
Yeah.
But we'll see. But I don't know what domino. What will be the sort of canary in the coal mine. But we're at least probably a few months away from that, and if we get there, then come back to me.
My sense is. Go ahead, Eric.
I just want to applaud Murph because I have been annoyed with the college football coverage of this in the last week, because none of these people. I mean, McMurphy. I mean, first of all, these college football media guys are the most cynical, negative people in the world. I mean, doom and gloom anyway. They like the doom and gloom.
Hey, speak for yourself.
I'm just saying. I mean, but Murph's right. Nobody knows what the heck's going to happen in the next 3 weeks, let alone 2 months. So I feel like we're jumping the gun here on things that we just don't know what the heck's going to happen. Unfortunately,
well, I will say, gun to my head, I would say I'm not optimistic, because you look at what the city of Toronto did with banning all city-led events.
Right. But again, we don't know for sure, right, Murph? I mean, we don't 100% sure. I tend to agree with you, Murph. I said when the sports got canceled, I think I said I don't expect a fan to be at a sporting event the rest of the year. I still believe that. Hope I'm wrong, but I don't see a scenario where how someone can justify saying, yeah, no, we're cool. Let's have 100,000 people at Ann Arbor for a football game. I don't. How do you justify that unless now? But again, this is the beauty of it. We don't know what the heck's coming. Maybe we have treatment that we don't know about now, or might know that there might be treatment that says, you know what, this treatment will help you. You can go ahead now and have a normal life. We don't know. We don't know. We have to let it play out. I think the approach to take is what the NFL has done. The NFL is proceeding as is, normal schedule. And they're not going to speculate, hey, what if there's a season? No, we're not going to speculate. We're planning on having a season. When we have to adjust, we will adjust. And I think if I'm the college people, I would be thinking about all your options secretly, but I would stop talking to the media about, oh, woe is us, and all that crap.
I kind of agree with that. I'm sure the NFL has plan Bs through plan Ns right now. Yes. with what's going on, but they're not saying it publicly. Now, publicly, what they are saying makes them sound like ignorant and sort of deaf to the current climate. but I kind of understand it in terms of a PR standpoint.
Is it that, or are they that, or are they perceiving optimism? I mean, it depends on, are you a half bottle, is your glass half empty, half full? There's some people that would say that gives them some positivity, right? And we need that, and just in general, people right now need something positive. Hey, I remember Keith Olbermann did an interview last week with Paul Feinbaum, and he spoke about 9/11, and there was a cop in New York that stopped him and said, hey, do you think that my Braves can catch can the Mets catch the Braves? And Keith was surprised by that answer. He's like, "What? That's kind of an irrelevant question right now with everything that's going on." And the cop said, "No, you're right. That it doesn't matter. But I just thinking like that helps me get through a day." So right now, there's a lot of people that are concerned about unemployment. They need something positive. And if it's just a false thing or whatever, the fact that, hey, maybe there will be an NFL season, I think does give some people optimism and hope and help them get through this. I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, I agree, but I wouldn't say that it's an intrinsic optimism. I believe that behind it is just a private thing of, like, publicly we're going to say one thing, privately we have to plan for another. And I don't agree. I don't think that they would be so brazen and ignorant to not plan for a possible cancellation or postponement of the season, but they're not saying it publicly, so people are taking their shots at the NFL because it makes them sound ignorant. However, like you're saying, maybe they're just trying to be optimistic for the sake of their audience at large, because they don't want to add on to all of the other things that we're missing right now, but hopefully privately they are planning to not have a season.
And I also want to say this. I don't want to hear a college coach or administrator say, our kids need a month of, we got to prepare to. With everybody what's going on right now, nobody wants to hear about, our kid needs, he needs weightlifting right now. He's out of shape. Okay, if it comes to that point where, if your fall practice is canceled, if you only have a month to prepare, deal with it. Adapt to it, all right? Stop whining about it. There's more important things to worry about than, oh, my God, I have a football team and I only have 3 weeks to prepare. Please.
Again, and also, like, this is a sports podcast, but I think the larger point that you're sort of poking at there is this is not, like, terribly important to the general aspect of global politics and global social structures. I mean, this is
right. That's why, like I'm saying, like, I really do think the less you say, if you're a sport right now, the better. Don't be speculating, hey, we could be in big trouble if there's no season. Well, of course you're in trouble, and we know that. But stop spreading that out, because now what happens is you get people more ticked off, and you get college football people like, what do you mean we're not going to have it? So we don't need that right now. So just stop talking to McMurphy. Turn off if he calls you, shut it down. Just don't answer. Don't answer.
But if we call you, please answer, because we need the content. Yes. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you here. Like, we need to hear from people.
Like I said, look, let's hope that we have. And we've kind of could they? They could do. I think there will be a college football season of some sorts. I think whether it be later in the fall, in the spring, probably, maybe, because they, hopefully. But I think there are some interesting logistics with that. I was talking to somebody who works in college athletics, because if you move football to the spring, odds are you have football, men's basketball, women's basketball, softball, baseball. I mean, it would be. I mean, there, as you guys know, there's a lot of athletic departments, media relations people that, boy, that's going to be a long spring.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a good problem to have, but wow. And
good problem to have. You're right.
Eric, again, hypothetical. Let's say college football is played in the spring.
Sure.
Would UCF's other programs be able to survive?
If there's a football season of some sorts. Yeah, I do. I do think the sports would survive, but I do think, and I do think there would be some economic adjustments being made internally, right? I mean, and I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. I'd like to think that most coaches would be okay taking a pay cut, because I'd rather take a pay cut than not have a job in a program to run anymore. So, yeah, I think UCF's in a good spot. I think the programs that are in trouble are the Conference USAs, the MACs,
right?
And things like that. But hopefully, I think UCF would be okay. there might be some adjustments. Hopefully, I'd like to think we wouldn't lose sports, but I do think there would be some restrictions internally as far as, hey, we can't do this blankety blank anymore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
other programs can't get chartered planes to events or.
Right. It does feel like to me that like UCF is kind of a bellwether between the schools that can financially take the hit and the schools that can't. I tend to be optimistic about UCF individually speaking, since it's a gigantic major public school. There's enough financial resources there to take the hit. That's not to say that a hit won't be taken of some kind. What that looks like, I have no idea. I would be really worried, like I said, if I were, SMU, a small private school, or obviously you mentioned Tulsa, Tulane. That's where I think the American becomes the interesting. Again, the biggest stories in football are in the American Athletic Conference right now, because what is this conference going to look like when things get back to normal? If they get back to normal.
Well, here's the other thing. The last 3 years of football, I think, is one of the reasons why I feel pretty good, because they, revenue-wise, probably through the roof, right? With the last 3 years, with 2017, with the success they've had, we've seen the stadiums pretty much full, the cabanas. So I think they've made a lot of money. If they had a couple seasons like they did in 2015, I wouldn't be as optimistic.
That's true. That's very true. All right. Let's wrap this thing up. I mean, I hope you guys, first of all, my hope for everybody who's listening is that you continue to stay safe. Obviously, we're now on a statewide shelter in place right now. But my hope is that at least we give you, an hour plus of time to get through it as hard as it is, because we're all dealing with our own issues, trying to deal with it. Murph, you live downtown, right? So, you're in a pretty pretty populous area right now. It's probably a ghost town down there, isn't it?
Not as much as you'd think.
Really? Well, listen, Wall Street ain't open. I know that much.
I mean, look. Okay, so again, and I'm not trying to rustle feathers here. I'm not trying to be contrarian. If you listen to Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx, people at CDC, it is okay to go outside. It is totally fine to walk your dog and take a jog. Just don't do it with other people. Don't be next to people for a long period of time. If you're running on a bike path, try to maintain 6 feet of distance with everybody, even as you're running. I did this. So guys, confession, I've been running outside because I'm not going to be inside. I cannot be inside all day. I'd lose my mind, and I need to get fresh air. And it's an interesting running around Lake Eola. When you pass somebody on the path around the lake, people are very cognizant of this, and either you or the person that you're kind of running toward, you guys will naturally separate. We'll naturally separate from each other, so you maintain some distance. You really just do not see people running next to each other. People are not really walking together. There are still a lot of people walking around and running around and riding their bike and walking their dog, and I think that's totally fine. I mean, all the experts said it's totally fine, so I'm cool with that. But it is interesting that even though you're still out there, I think people are still observing the standards of separation and no group activity. And as long as that holds up and people continue to follow the standards of not touching your face and washing your hands and making sure every other foreign object, metallic object you touch, you do so with either the back of your hand, or if you have to touch it with your hand, then wash it immediately, or carry sanitizer on you. If that all happens, then you will be fine. You can go outside.
Eric, did you?
The good news, Murph, is we should be used to that, because every time Trace comes to greet us, he keeps his long distance away from us anyway. So we should be. Trace has actually helped us prepare for this. Trace knew the future about this.
He did. Trace.
Someone check on Trace, man.
Yes. He's thriving on this, man. He's used to this. He invented social distancing before social distancing was even the trendy.
Quarantine has allowed me to tell Trace what movies he should watch. But by the way, I am currently on day 11 of watching a movie a day. I have 63 other films on my list, and I think I might be able to finish it by the time we're all done.
Yeah, he sounded like he didn't like your recommendation of Rocky. But...
Well, no. No, and okay, that's a sports thing. Can we get into this?
Okay, all right, I'll allow it. Go ahead.
Quickly,
yes.
Trace thought Rocky was boring, quote unquote, so boring. What?
That's a hot take. I'm not gonna lie, that's a hot take.
The man does not understand that Rocky is not a boxing film. It is not Cinderella Man. It is not a film that contains a lot of boxing. It is a story about a boxer and his life and his underdog story to becoming, recognized and celebrated. A guy from the inner city of Philadelphia to becoming somebody. A guy who was nobody becomes somebody. The local hero triumphs. It's about triumphing under adversity and the very popular underdog story, and yet he misses all of that to say it's boring. The man does not understand story building. It blew my mind. I've never heard anybody say that. So that was nuts. By the way, Rocky 2 through 5 are on my list to also rewatch, which I'll be doing.
Why are you gonna watch 5? Don't waste your time on 5. Come on.
Listen, I think you have to prepare yourself for the more recent Rocky movies. With Rocky Balboa and Creed and all that. You have to get it in there. It's like you have to pay the price to get to the good stuff, right?
The only two I saw were Rocky and Creed. So Rocky, I've never seen Rocky 2 through. I know parts of Rocky, 2 through 4 or 5. I know I know Dolph Lundgren and Mr. T and all that stuff, but I haven't seen the actual film. So I'm gonna watch that. I've sort of cultivated a wide base of films. I watched a film that was released last year, and then yesterday I watched Duck Soup, which is the really famous Marx Brothers film from 1933.
Wow, you're really throwing it back.
Woo! Just still really funny. I mean, if you like, Airplane and Naked Gun and those kind of films, it's just a straight line from those films to the Marx Brothers in the 30s. It was great. Now, there's also, as I'm going through these films, as I'm going through Rocky, as I'm going through Duck Soup or The Breakfast Club, it's amazing to sort of watch these films and point out, because we're so on alarm for it, point out all of the socially unacceptable dialogue and actions of the characters. Like, there's a point in Rocky where Rocky kind of becomes a bit of a sexual predator, and that is not being a hot take artist. There was a really uncomfortable scene where Rocky's kind of a sexual predator.
What movie is it? What scene? What?
Yeah, he does come on overly strong to Adrian at that one part, and that's nowadays not kosher.
Yeah, that way they wouldn't. That doesn't age well. Yeah.
He tried. Like, Adrian tries to leave, right? She wants to go home. I gotta go home. She's being more demonstrative in that scene than we'd ever seen her, and he keeps saying, "No, stay with me, stay here," and then actively blocks the door with his arm and basically just smothers her with a kiss, and she sort of falls into his arms, and they make out. But holy crap, that is an uncomfortable scene to watch. But again, as you kind of go through all these films, and certainly going back to the Marx Brothers of the 30s, there's some really insensitive dialogue in there, because it's the 30s, and menstrual shows were still popular and still thought it was a cool thing. So yeah.
Well, first of all, I gotta applaud you with the Duck Soup reference on this show, man. We have run the cultural gamut here.
But you're watching all these movies. You're going outside, getting some fresh air. How did you sneak in on Interview with Johnny Dawkins during all this?
It was not hard. And I would like to say this: Johnny seemed as excited to talk to me as I was to him. So that was nice.
That's good to hear.
It was nice. There's nothing else going on, so it was nice to talk to him and talk to Love, and I didn't bring it up during our baseball segment, but I'm trying to get in contact with some of the baseball players, specifically the seniors like Jordan Rathbone or Jalen Whitehead. With those guys, how do they feel about the extra year? But more importantly, will they be able to take advantage of it? I mean, this would be their 6th year in college if they came back. Can they can they afford to do it? And then obviously I have not talked to Lovelady since the decision came down. I'd love to hear what he thinks about. I know he's for it. I know he likes what they did as far as giving the guys an extra year of eligibility. But I also like to hear him talk about what kind of madness and craziness and sort of frustration there's going to be, because there's going to be so many moving parts and so many guys on this team, and who wants to leave, who can you play, who can you afford, all that stuff that he really needs to figure out. I look forward to talking to him about that, and hopefully that happens. I hope that happens within a week.
Cool. Elo, you meanwhile have been, like I said, a model citizen, looking after your folks, and
can I order delivery? Am I allowed to? Can I order? Is that safe, Merv? I mean, any other advice? Can I order food? I mean, can I?
You can order food. It's okay if you go out, actually open the door and accept it from the carrier. You can do that. I swear it's okay.
We're leaving it at the door. That's been my instructions. Leave it at the door.
My challenge to you is to go outside.
My challenge has been.
Maybe I'll do the show next week from my backyard. Would that count?
Not bad. That counts. The weather's been nice the last couple days. My thing is this. All right, so you guys know I teach online classes at Full Sail full time. I've gotten no break, and in addition to this, I'm also teaching my son. He's in kindergarten, so and he goes to public school. So like I'm also having to teach him. Let me tell you something. And now I am an educator. I know. How hard this job is. And let me tell you something. And I have always, throughout my life, I mean, I am where I am because of the teachers that I had when I was in elementary, middle, and high school. I owe a tremendous amount of credit to them. And let me tell you something. I've never in my life thought that their job was easy. I know for a fact it's not. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world. I'd never realized exactly how hard it was until I tried to convince my son to draw a cow. Let me tell you something. You public school teachers out there, I will rush to your defense. But to all those people out there who are listening to this, who are like, public school teachers, they always get the summer off, you can shut up because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Our public school teachers are freaking angels. They are saints and angels, all of them. And they deserve, after this, I hope every public school teacher in the United States of America gets a threefold raise because they deserve it. And quite frankly, I still don't think it's enough. So let me tell you something. So a shout out to all you public school teachers out there who've been busting your tails, getting your classes online for your students, who are all trying to access it, do the best that they can. You guys are the heroes of this age, along with our medical professionals as well, who are literally putting themselves in harm's way. My wife is one of them. She's a nurse. Now she's not in the ER, she's not in the ICU, but she still has to go to work at the hospital every day at Arnold Palmer. So I've always had a tremendous amount of admiration, but it's like you don't even realize what it's like until you really have to do it yourself. And man, much love out there for the public school teachers. So, all right, let's wrap this thing up. We've got a lot going on. Thank you. I'll be here all week. We're going to try and get some more stuff out there. I'll be showing you guys hopefully my college football ranking system from last year, the results from last year, if we can get a couple things tweaked. Derek Warden has given me a little tips and tricks on this, which I really appreciate. Thank you, Derek. And thanks to everybody else who has been listening. Thanks to all the guys who've been cranking it out, especially you two fellas. And here's to another week, and we'll just...
Hey, who says there's nothing? I disagree, Merv. There is something going on, brother.
There's always something
going on.
Oh, it's WrestleMania weekend, baby.
Oh boy, it's the perpetual. I was going to say it's the perpetual off season. There's always stuff going on in the off season, but yeah, WrestleMania.
In fact, stay tuned. Where all you people, where you listen to this podcast, me and Murph are going to have a UCF rewind. We're going to rewind back to a special edition where we go back and talk about Greg Lovelady's first WrestleMania, which was in Orlando in WrestleMania 33. Murph did a big feature article about it, and we're going to talk about it on the podcast, and we're going to actually air an interview with Lovelady that we did in 2018 about that whole process and some more, right, Murph?
Yeah, absolutely. We sat down, you and me, Eric, sat down in his office for, I believe, 40 to 45 minutes and talked about not only Greg's experience going to WrestleMania when WrestleMania was here in Orlando at Camping World in 2017, but also his history of growing up as a wrestling fan, how much he still loves it. I mean, this is a guy, Greg Lovelady, who for every Sunday home game, when he comes to the park, when he comes to John Juliano Park, he is wearing a wrestling T-shirt every Sunday game. So WrestleMania is a big deal for him. He's got friends in the business. We've had wrestling night at the park before. We had NXT star Matt Riddle throw out the first pitch of a game last year. So wrestling's a big part of Greg Lovelady's life. We talk about that, his history, his fandom, and also what it was like for him to go to a WrestleMania that me and you were also at. 2017, that coming up on the Black and Gold Banneret.
That's going to be fun, and I appreciate, obviously, you guys taking the lead on that one, so I'll just leave it at that. For Brian and Eric, I'm Jeff. Make sure you listen to us right here at blackandgoldbanneret.com, facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret, and UCF_Banneret. Guys, continue to stay safe. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
And thanks to you for listening. Continue to stay safe out there. All the best. We'll all get through it together. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We'll catch you with the WrestleMania special later this week.